On November 14, 1988, Mary Franklin buried her husband with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. It was a bittersweet end to 22 years of uncertainty.
On the one hand, there's the realization that I can close the books, that I must close the books, should, and that it's an opportunity to close the books. And on the other hand, a sense of loss of something that's familiar and, you know, a role that I know.
This is the last picture ever taken of Air Force Colonel Charles Franklin. In August of 1966, his fighter jet was shot down in Vietnam, but there was evidence he had survived the crash.
I had no reason to believe he was dead and hoped he wasn't. And of course it was difficult, yes.
Mary met her future husband in her homeland, England, back in 1964. Chuck was on leave from his airbase in Germany. Shortly after, their relationship began.
He was kind of a playboy in a way, in a nice way, but a gent, you know, I mean, a real gentleman and terribly kind and sensible and responsible, along with being a party boy. It was just a great mixture of the two, you know.
Chuck went back to his post in Germany and continued courting Mary long distance.
I'd say to my father, "Guess who called last night?" And he'd say, "Who?" And I'd say, "And we talked for 2 hours. My American boyfriend." And he'd say, "Young man has more money than sense."
Mary and Chuck were married military style at Bittsburg Air Force Base in Germany. Their time together would be brief. Only 2 months later, Chuck pulled a tour of duty in Vietnam. At the same time, Mary found out she was pregnant with their child.
I'm so glad. I mean, obviously it was the best, most wonderful thing that could possibly have happened.
Colonel Franklin flew his F-105 on bombing missions over North Vietnam. Days were long, and there was little time for letter writing. Instead, he communicated with his wife in a way that would come to mean much more.
Don't worry very much about our operation over here. We're doing very, very well. Don't worry about our airplane. I'd rather fly the 105 than anything else over here. I got my first air medal. How about that? You've got a bloody hero in your midst, stop. I love you. Love you so much. Connie Barrett.
This was the last time Mary would hear Chuck's voice. On August 14, 1966, Mary received the news she had dreaded.
I remember that day as though it were a movie that I've seen 10 times.
Chuck's plane had been hit somewhere north of Hanoi.
They call it an incident in the Air Force.
On a routine bombing run, Colonel Franklin and his squad ran into enemy fire.
That Chuck had radioed to the others that they should get out of there. He would try to draw their fire, which he apparently was quite successful in doing.
Get out of here to the southwest.
The next transmission confirmed he'd been hit. Chuck radioed that he'd try to eject.
They didn't see him. I had no further visual contact with him. They did pick up the beeper sound when the ejector seat ejects successfully, so they knew he got out of the plane.
The Air Force declared Charles Franklin missing in action.
When somebody dies, it's a different thing than when they just disappear. Going on under those circumstances meant keeping things together for him to come back to, including raising our son.
3 months after Chuck went down, Mary gave birth to Charles Jr. The spitting image of his father, Charles is 22 now. All he knows about his dad is what his mom has told him.
He believed in, his country and believed in what he was doing. And he was a good man. But yet he was he was a fun person. And I can see that in my mom. I can see how she'd be attracted to someone like that because she's like that. So I think it would have been neat to see them together.
3 months ago, the Franklins' long wait came to an end. Mary was sad but relieved to receive word that Chuck's remains had been identified.
It's a very confused mixture of emotions. I can't really tell you any one emotion because it's all, a lot of them at once and in rapid succession and so forth.
And this is kind of like the ultimate, having someone just shake you and say, this is real, this is your father, you have a father, and he is, he's gone. You'll never know him.
Charles E. Franklin's name has always been on the wall, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. All MIAs are listed. Now it's official. Colonel Franklin died the same day he was shot down. He didn't survive his parachute fall.
To look up and see, you know, Charles E. Franklin, I mean, for the first time to touch it, you know, and to actually, you know, see, it's like nothing I can describe.
I'm sorry there had to be a wall.
On a crisp November morning, the Franklin family gathered together. Colonel Charles Franklin had come home, his tour of duty finally over.
I'm able to mourn now, and I wasn't before.